In this lesson, I want to talk about drum fills, and I'm going to give you a very simple concept which will allow you to generate, for example, 28 fills from one very simple fill. And rather than dealing with notation and looking at it on that level, I'm going to show you the concept in a way that I would present it to a 5-year-old if I had to explain this to them. So what we're going to look at is a 2-beat drum fill. So let's say we're going to have a bar of groove. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 beats of groove, 1, 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a. And we're going to fill for those 8 16th notes at the end, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So what I have down here is something that I've printed up in Excel. It's just a grid with 3 E and a, 4 E and a written across the top. And I have some coins here. So we have 3 lines: rack tom, snare drum, and floor tom. And these represent note heads. So if I was to put, for example, all of the coins in the snare drum thing, and I only have 6, we're dealing with 6 notes, and then these 2 strips of post-it note represent rests. So I'm just going to fill in the last 2 16th notes with that. So this is a little bit unorthodox, but basically to play this, when we get to the fill, we have 1, 2, 3 E and a, 4 E, and then rest for and a. So that would sound like this as a fill. I'm going to talk about melodic and rhythmic ideas. So a melodic idea is to do with the sounds that we're playing on. So snare drum and the toms. So I've got here a rack tom, snare drum, and floor tom. So let's say we have a fill that goes 2 notes on the snare drum, 2 notes on the rack tom, and 2 notes on the floor tom. That's a melodic idea. 2 notes on the snare, going down to 2 notes on the rack tom, then to 2 notes on the floor tom. Let me play you that fill. So what we're going to do in order to turn this one simple fill into 28 fills, all in the same kind of family, is we're going to keep the melodic idea, which is the 2 notes on the snare, 2 notes on the rack tom, 2 notes on the floor tom, and all we're going to do is move the rests to change the rhythmic element of this pattern. So in order to do that, I'm going to take off this rest here, and let's say I'm going to put this, so let's take them both off, and all we do is move this pattern based on where we want to put the rests. So let's say I want to put them both at the beginning. This whole thing is going to have to move over to allow us to put them both in at the beginning. So that's rest 1, that's rest 2. So the kind of concept here is that rather than thinking about moving the notes, we're thinking about moving the rests. We know we've got 6 notes here. Where are we going to put these 2 rests? So let's put them at the beginning and see what that sounds like as a fill. So it's going to be 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So that's the fill with the 2 rests at the beginning. So how do we get 28 fills using this concept? Well, let's say we leave the first rest where it is. How many places can this second rest go? It can go in the E, on the and, on the a, on the 4, E and a. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 places that this rest can go. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's move it to the next position, which is the and. So in order to do that, I have to move that note back. So now we've got a new fill, which sounds like this. So you'll notice that I'm using the same sticking, right, left, right, left, right, left. So always right, left, right, left, right, left. And that means I'll always be able to get round these 3 drums without getting mixed up with my hands, okay? So let's look at the next fill. We move this rest over to the a, so therefore that goes back there. So you can see how this concept, a 5-year-old could pick up on this pretty quickly. See what this fill sounds like. And then you move this rest across to the 4. So we've got to move this one back. Okay, we have a new fill. So that, for example, is a fill that I would be unlikely to come up with of my own accord. It's a little bit different than the things I usually come up with, but it sounds good, and it's in keeping with the other fills that we have because it's got the same melodic element, 2 on the snare, 2 on the tom, 2 on the floor tom. So you can see the 7 positions we can move this rest. And then we move the first rest, my arm getting in the way of the on-screen graphics, the first rest would go in the E position, and the second rest would go next to it. So this is the kind of next starting position. Okay, so we would then move the second rest. That's 1 position, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 different variations where you start with the first rest on the E. And then you can see there will be 5 variations if we go on the and then and 4, and E, and a. And then 4 positions going A4, A-E, A-and, A. 3 from the 4, 2 from the E, and then 1 from the and. And if you add all those up, you get 28 different fills, all with the same 2 notes on the snare, 2 notes on the tom, 2 notes on the floor tom. So you can work through all those very quickly and decide which ones you like the sound of. So just as an example, let's arrange this so we get a kind of Phil Collins fill. Da, da, rest, da, da, rest. So here we go for a Phil Collins kind of fill. So that's a very simple concept that will give you 28 different fills from 2 rests in an 8-beat pattern. If you have 3 rests, you get a whole bunch more fills. And that's keeping the same melodic elements to it. The next thing you can do is change the melodic structure. So let's say instead of having 2 on the snare, 2 on the rack tom, 2 on the floor tom, we had 3 on the snare, 1 on the rack tom, 2 on the floor tom. You can see now that every combination that we just went through, and in fact all of those 28 combinations, if you change that 1 note from the tom to the snare, that's going to give you a different sounding fill every time. So let me play this fill now. And to give you one final example, I'm going to go back and put these rests at the beginning. So move these across. So you can see it's really easy when you're not thinking about how you write it and you're not thinking about where the notes are, you're just thinking about where you put these 2 rests. It's the simplest way to change this pattern around. So here's a fill, 3 notes on the snare, 1 on the rack tom, 2 on the floor tom. So I like that fill, and it's very simple, and like I say, you've got 28 variations with this melodic lineup. If you were to go 4 on the snare, 2 on the floor tom, that's another 28. You go 1 on the snare, 3 on the rack tom, 2 on the floor tom, that's another 28. So you can see there's a whole wealth of different fill ideas from these very simple concepts, and this is working just in 16th notes. If you were to add triplets into that, or double ups of the notes, or add another rest, then you get many more variations. So before you start thinking you need to use other drums and you need to get more complicated with what you're doing, just think about using up all the possibilities with just 3 simple drums, just 16th notes, and play around with all those and see what you can find that you like. And I think you'll find this a useful concept. So if you've enjoyed this lesson, if you like my approach, the way I teach, you might want to check out my website, joecrabtree.com, where I have lessons covering everything from breaking down complex solos into bite-sized chunks that even a beginner drummer could understand. I talk about hand technique, foot technique, grooves, fills, solos, concepts, this kind of thing. There's a lot of stuff on there, so come and check it out at joecrabtree.com.